So one of the questions we get all the time is it okay, or should I maybe consider looking at managing a property that's remote? That's not, for someone that's brand new, we typically recommend they start in their own backyard just to get some experience under their belt. But depending on where a student may be located, that may not always be possible or may not always be the best idea, just depending on what local regulations, what have you look like, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, we are managing or starting to manage a property for actually a client of ours in Calgary, okay? So we call this the Daffodil House. It's a very unique property. It's a 1910 vintage, so it's got a lot of historical characteristics to it. We really speak to this in the listing in terms of the history, the uniqueness, how it really stands out, and some of the different factors in the neighborhood, all these different things. But you'll probably notice, the reviews we've had have not been that fantastic. Okay, now we're going to get into the financial statement in a moment here, and this is always someone's deepest fear. If they're managing a property from far away, what is the worst possible case scenario that can happen? So let's talk about it, because we had a very interesting year so far in this property. Now, diving into the financial, we have actually been managing this property from about July last year until present day today. But one of the biggest challenges we had, so I want to paint a picture for you, Michael. So within Calgary, every year there's something called the Calgary Stampede. Have you heard of Stampede before?
Well, there was I think a pro football team years ago, the Calgary Stampeders, right?
Okay.
That's all I know.
Yeah, okay. The Calgary Stampede it's a big deal. It's a big deal in Alberta. Like, basically the whole city shuts down for almost like 2 weeks, and people just get all kinds of, people go crazy over it, right? So we had this booking where, now overall for like 6 months, we did, 38 grand on it. Not too bad. But what really missed the mark on this particular property, we had a booking come in for around a 2.5 month period over the peak season of the year for $40,000 just off one booking for 2.5 months. Okay.
Wow.
We were ecstatic. We were spiking the football. We're like, man, this is so great. This is amazing. What ended up happening within 1 week of us having that guest check into the property, because I mentioned earlier, this is a 1910 vintage home, a pipe burst in an interior wall of the property, completely flooded the basement, and we had to give almost all of that money back.
Wow. Okay, that is the worst case scenario. Yep.
So what do we do? Well, I mean, what do you do when you have a problem? You just start tackling it, right? So what ended up happening, we ended up getting a remediation company in there. Now, because this is a partnership deal, our business did not experience the costs of having to actually restore and bring the property back to its former condition. But from an opportunity cost standpoint, we lost on a huge amount of revenue, absolutely huge amount of revenue. I mean, $40,000, like those kinds of bookings don't come around all the time. Right? So anyways, sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Did you guys get the property back after it got restored?
Yeah, so it was down for about a month, give or take. It was a real mess, but we ended up getting operations kicking over and turning again. And overall, this has still been a relatively decent unit for us. So getting into kind of the nuts and bolts, this deal is a partnership. So it wasn't kind of like the last example where it was a quasi hybrid of rental arbitrage turning into. This is 100% a partnership deal. So we do not have a lease. We had no deposit. And for all the furnishings that you see in this property, we did not pay for them. Okay. That was actually covered by the homeowner in this particular case. And it's actually a good friend of ours. So anyways, getting into the details. So this property over a 6 month period still did, a respectable, just shy of around $39,000. So not too bad. So getting into some of the different costs, again, it's going to look very similar to the last example. Service fees, you got to pay our maids, property management service. Left us with around $30,000 gross profit. Okay. Management fees, that's the actual disbursements that go to my client. We had to refund a guest another time. Long story short, to the business, we made around $8,100 on this in 6 months, 21% profit margin on just shy of 39 grand. So the numbers obviously would have been a lot better if we had kept that $40,000 booking, but Overall, it's still very early in the life of the management of this property. So looking to 2023, are we going to do anything different? No, we're going to continue to manage it, see what happens, weigh the headache to income ratio and go from there. So